This is very exclusive.
Okay.
Exclusive gathering.
So a very exclusive gathering. So the purpose of tonight is to tell you a bit more about a thriller that we wrote called Death at Davos 3.0. It's the last book of the trilogy that started that started 2 years ago. And the idea was to shed light of what happens in Davos behind the curtain. It's a geopolitical thriller trying to grasp what is at stake when all these decision makers come to Davos, policy makers, business leaders, media leaders, leaders from all walks of life. And we can always assume that there is a lot happening behind closed doors. Would you like to join us here for the presentation of the book? You are going to love it. Hein?
Je pense qu'il faut annoncer dehors.
Yeah. And writing a fiction
It's fun.
is a fantastic way to explore what might happen in the future, because fiction is by essence the meta-discipline. Every single field you can think of, any academic discipline, is contained in fiction. Like history, geopolitics, economics, biology, food, everything, geography, of course, and everything else. So when you do fiction, you can address everything at once, and you are only limited by one thing, which is the power of your imagination. So it's a great way to think about what might happen next. And that's what we try to do with this book. I say we because I co-wrote it with my with my wife, who should be around. And we, if you read it, and some of you did, I know, you realize that we try to address all the themes that you're going to hear while you're in Davos. So it's about the WEF, even though it's a fiction. It takes place in a fictional place. It's about the WEF, what happened at the WEF, the patricide that took place this year, with Klaus Schwab being replaced by a triumvirate led by Borge Brende and two co-chairs, one of whom is, of course, immensely influential, Larry Fink, because he comes to Davos with this 14 trillion of assets under management. Another one is about Trump and his character, the vanity of the man, the way in which psychology drives so many of the policies that he's trying to implement around the world. Trump's, of course, relations with tech titans, these masters of the universe. The war in Ukraine, which is really what the plot is all about. It's about the relationship between Trump, Putin, and Zelensky. And what we're trying to unveil in the book is the reason why Trump consistently does Putin's bidding. And I think we provide an answer, which you might enjoy. And of course, what's happening in Russia at the moment, it's the last element of this plot, and Russia has moved further. We are talking about an hybrid war, but it's much more than that. It's a cognitive war being led by Russia, aimed at dividing us, at seeding suspicion in the Western world, and hoping that we might disintegrate altogether. So this is what the book is all about. And I invite you to read it, of course. I'm not going to disclose the essence of the plot. But what we are going to do tonight is to not to present the book, because that would be boring, but to engage into a conversation. And for each of these themes, Marianne is going to read a small extract, which will form the basis of our conversation. So let's start with what?
Your reflection.
With the reflection on the WEF, yeah.
The reflection
What's
on the
happening at the WEF this year?
So our enigmatic Ukrainian heroine, Olena Kostarenko, has returned to Davos. She was a former employee of the Circle. Last year she was here as an undercover operative for the CIA. And for a third year she's on her way back. And she's reflecting on whether the Circle will be different this year. As for the annual meeting, What would it become now? What was the global elite's symbolic pilgrimage going to look like? Different, undeniably. Despite a whitewash destined to salvage the circle, the Don was gone. Cast out in a brutal spectacle worthy of the Colosseum, half execution, half coronation. Some trustees and staff had bayed for blood and installed 2 new co-chairs in his place. An impossible task awaited them. The world had shifted. Neoliberalism was dead, and the circle, long the temple of orthodoxy, was out of sync. Left as it was, the Davos meeting no longer made sense. Reinvention was on the cards. A coup was possible. Or would it be more of the same? She knew Davos was far less important for what it did, peddling good intentions buried in platitudes, than what it provided. A platform for all sorts of deals and conversations among its high-level participants.
So that's the backdrop of what's happening in the book, of course, because it's informed by the reality of the Davos event. And if a thriller wants to be convincing, it needs to be grounded in the myriad of details of the reality of what's happening on the ground, of course. And we try to think about how the forum might evolve now that Klaus Schwab is out. You know that for many, many years the forum had a strong commitment made to improving the state of the world. This is what the motto of the World Economic Forum is all about, committed to improving the state of the world. And for many, many years, the forum was successful in conveying this impression among participants that it was doing good. And in the book, we posit that this myth has imploded in recent years for reasons that we explain in the book. And we are delighted because when we made this statement, we wrote the book in November, December. It was a bit provocative. But yesterday, for those of you who listened to Larry Fink, he said it. He said we need to reinvent the organization because otherwise it's bound to become totally meaningless. And he even talked about the need to address inequality, of course, which has been in the cards for so many, many years with little to show for. And so it's a question to all of you. You are Davos participants or you are participating on the margin of the event itself. So what do you think? What do you think about the way in which Davos is unfolding? Do you think it's changing? Do you think it's improving? Do you think it's in trouble? Is anybody willing to make a statement? Yes, please.
Yes, I think Davos is becoming more accessible to people.
More accessible because there are more people, you think?
Yes, I think it's more accessible to even some less lower positions.
But
Right.
doesn't accessibility come at the cost of exclusivity?
Yes.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I think in the end, the thing that matters is the connections that happen out
Of course.
of this, not the exclusivity.
Yeah, of course.
This is not what it's saying.
Yeah.
An event is exclusive, for instance, but in the end, the connections that happen in the event.
So you could make the case that it's become a highly successful, huge commercial fair. Because, of course, you have the event itself with its program and about 300-400 sessions. And then you have the thousands of sessions taking place outside, on the margin, trying to piggyback the event and the presence of all these doers to organize their own event, like the Davos Lodge very successfully.
Very nice that we have an outcome from everyone. We have different opinions, different looks of view. So I think it's moving towards a very good direction, a more globalized direction.
But the theme of this year's summit is a state of dialogue. Do you think it's a dialogue or is it going to be a series of monologues?
I think in order to have a good dialogue, everybody has to have their monologues.
Okay, maybe.
Be respectful towards everybody.
And hope that someone's listening to the monologue, which makes a dialogue.
Brooke, please.
I have to say this is my first time, but I've been following Davos for
agenda.
priorities and views. So I'm not sure to what extent that's true. The West says that they've maintained their independence, but certainly the pressure is there, and it's questionable whether Trump would have come if he believed that there was going to be a sort of woke agenda around him. So I'm quite concerned about that. On the more positive side is that Larry Fink apparently has been very active in bringing US corporates over, and maybe he's even had a role in bringing Trump over. So you've got your potential. I mean, the fact of the matter is there's two cultures now clashing with each other tomorrow.
Within this valley.
And maybe that is a sort of dialogue, but maybe a dialogue of deaths.
Maybe. Yes.
So what do you think of the difference between dialogue and dialectic? And actually in particular, from the very launch of this, it's also obviously my first time, it's my first time. What is the structural incentive, let alone a moral incentive, to actually even improve the state of the world? So it's kind of two questions there. Well, because one would hope that people come to Davos and engage,
Is it open?
not just
Open?
a dialogue or a series
Yeah?
of
Yeah?
monologues, which with all due respect, okay, do I have to repeat myself? Or
No, we heard. No, carry on, and then we can hear a little better.
Whatever. I mean, seriously, a room of people having monologues, I mean, it's insane. It's insane. To dialogue is to hear, to acknowledge someone as another, and to be there in an IU moment, not instrumentalizing the other person. But my question, to keep it short now, is to look to the future. What moral incentives are actually implicit or explicit in the World Economic Forum and Davos?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for your 2 points. Regarding Socratic dialogues, it's interesting the point that you made, because dialogues, to be meaningful, have to be based in Socratic norms. And when I was in charge of the program in the early 2000s, we had a series of templates. We had sessions, we had plenaries, we had workshops, we had lunches, etc., including Socratic dialogues. And we came to the conclusion that in order to have a meaningful Socratic dialogue, you need to have 8 hours ahead of you, because you engage into very in-depth conversations. And of course, in today's world, you can have 8-hour sessions. Nobody's going to spend 8 hours in a session in Davos, because that's not the purpose of what Davos is all about. So that's one point. So there is no Socratic dialogue. And I would argue that there are monologues, particularly this year, because Trump is dominating the agenda and he has no willingness whatsoever to engage into a dialogue with anybody. And your point about moral imperative, well, there is none. And at the point we make in the book, we debunk this myth that the forum is about improving the state of the world. The forum is a very successful organization which has been amazingly apt at creating the ultimate platform for networking. That's what it is all about. So I'm very conscious of the time, and we are going to move to the next point, if I may, which is about Trump's personality. And the book is grounded in real events. We have 2 chapters, one devoted to the dinner that took place between Trump and the tech titans in the White House in October. And we have 1 chapter that takes place during the state dinner hosted by the King in Windsor. And the beginning of this chapter is Trump thinking about how he feels about the event. And Marianne is going to read a few sentences about this.
17th September 2025, Windsor Castle, Berkshire, the UK. As King Charles III rose to propose a toast in his honour, the President felt it deep within himself. A sense that this moment, this night, was something unmatched. A pinnacle. The pinnacle. There was simply no other word for it. A sentiment that this raised royal glass heralded the height of his glory, tinged perhaps with a savourous hint of revenge. a reckoning of sorts, with all those total losers who continued to look down on him and think of him as some kind of hick. But here he was, being treated like a king, by the King of England in the oldest and largest inhabited castle in the world. That was big, very big. So classy, such a special place. So far, the whole day in Windsor Land had been a dream. The greeting from the prince and princess, a beautiful, beautiful lady. The inspection of the royal guard, with Charles joking, "Watch the sword." Funny guy. A bit uptight sometimes, but charming, very proper. The tour of St. George's Chapel. It's a lot of history, he'd pointedly told the king, who'd agreed, confirming that he knew his stuff. And the ride in the golden horse-drawn carriage with all its gilding and ornamentation. The most magnificent, unbelievable ride ever taken by any world leader, possibly in history. People waving, cheering. That had been the best. Until the state dinner, the apex, the true summit of the most elegant state visit ever. Tremendous, glittering success, total win.
So, well, actually, every single word is true, is real. We dig into the testimonies and articles about the event. Trump saying, for example, to the Princess of Wales,
The king.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Well, it's a small room, but so all of this is very real, and we thought it was meaningful to integrate it because so many people try to understand what Trump's policies are going to be based on rational expectations, trying to figure out what the best policies are going to be, and some psychologists, psychoanalysts, psychiatrists would argue that this is nonsense. If you want to understand what Trump is going to do, you need to dig into his, narcissistic personality, psyche. So we thought it was, funny to quote these moments that Trump spent in Windsor, which really is the acme of what he dreamt about realizing while traveling in England. And you know that the king is supposed to visit the US on an official state visit in March, I think, or April. And now it's suspended, in a state of suspended animation because star members decide that it's not such a good idea after all. We'll see. Maybe we'll hear more tomorrow. Madam.
Thank you. Sorry, just very, very quickly. So I actually work for the King. I'm employed by the royal household, and I was working the state visit when President Trump came to visit.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm not allowed to say very much about the inner details of what happened, but I would just like to say that I think it's very interesting how, even for those people who watched the entire event unfold on TV, obviously we had a very different image of what was going on. We were right there. But I think it's very interesting that it was even picked up from television cameras and from people, from the media and the press, just how important this state visit was to Trump himself. Because state visits are used by Britain as a form of soft power. They have been for centuries, and they're incredibly useful. But ultimately, Trump was the only, and probably will be the only second. He'll be the only president to receive a second state visit. It's only ever one. It's completely unprecedented, and it was a good tool that Britain's been able to use. But I just think it's very interesting that even though it did good things for Britain, they got some trade deals out of it, and they were able to discuss. However, it's important to remember that obviously for Trump, this was him being treated like the king that he thinks he is. So no, I just wanted to say that it was very interesting to hear the other side.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for your comment.
We'd love to hear what you think of the chapter.
And you have a commonality with Marianne, who also worked for the king.
Full disclosure, I worked for him for 8 years when he was Prince of Wales. But a lot longer ago than you.
Did you ask the help of a psychoanalyst to better understand the cliché of Trump?
Well, in fact, we did because we organized our own summit in Chamonix, as you know. And 1 year we had Schwartz, who wrote The Art of the Deal with Trump back in the early 2000s, I think. And it was.
He gave some extraordinary insights.
Yes, amazing stories. Yeah. And he was in Chamonix.
He was very frank, wasn't he?
Very frank, very candid. It was in the early 2000s, I think. even before the idea of Trump becoming a president. No, a bit later.
No, the book was in the early 2000s, but he was...
No, but when he came to Chamonix, well, before the election, and he said, well, I worked with the guy for 6 months on the book, and I can tell you, he's totally mad and toxic. And it came as a complete shock to the participants because everybody knew that he was probably a bit excessive in his statement, and but that was a great insight because it came from someone who'd been working very closely with him. And the book, we have also a testimonial from Anthony Scaramucci, who worked for Trump as a director of communication in 2017 for 1 month.
3 short weeks. But
And well, now Anthony is very vocal on the rest is politics, of course. And he says, well, when you work with Trump directly, you realize that the guy is totally mad,
flawed,
unhinged, narcissistic, etc. So these are interesting insights from people who know him well. His sister, who is a psychologist, has written extensively about the flaws of... no, not his sister, a cousin.
no, I think a half-sister or something.
No, sister.
Half-sister.
Yeah, half-sister. Yes, yeah.
And
That's
the
right,
brother.
that's right,
No,
yeah. So if it's okay now, we are going to write, to read a small excerpt from the chapter that takes place in the White House when Trump convened the Masters of the Universe, the tech titans in the US, but of course they are small schoolboys when they are in the White House with Trump.
So on the subject of state capitalism, which is rather pertinent at the moment.
State capture.
State capture. Ever since the administration had imposed a fee on India and AMD's exports of chips to China, and then taken a stake in Intel, they'd, titans, understood that none of their companies were safe from public interference. Now that the president had shattered the sacrosanct notion of the rule of law, they and their corporations were fair game, exploitable and expendable at will. Most assembled that night in the state dining room in the White House were in fact awaiting the announcement of the much-discussed MAGA bond, rumours about which had been circulating for months. The French bluster about the so-called Zuckman tax amused them greatly. Over here in the US, things would be far more radical. The wealthiest entrepreneurs would be invited to subscribe to a government bond meant to finance the national debt, or to a patriotic investment fund destined to support defence spending, or just a Trump bond to reconstruct America. And the $300 million ballroom? The gilded begging bowl and handcuffs strategy would repeat itself. Another dinner or solicitation would come sooner or later. Never anything as sordid as a tax, of course. An investment or a gift. Clever.
So funny. Yes. Why did you say, oh my God?
I thought that it was very interesting that he was able to ask for a percentage. Because I'm all for, free capital and everything, but it was a very interesting thing, and the fact that they actually did it. I was like, wow, we're on to something here.
Well, they did it in Davos with the USA House. When you look, I don't know who looked at the program of the USA House. So it's being financed 1 million, the company, by JP Morgan, by McKinsey, by Meta, I think, by 6 or 7 companies. Microsoft, of course, Bill Gates, from a Bill Gates company. And it's all about the US administration. I mean, these people have no role in the program. So again, a perfect example of state capture, which we, when we wrote the book back 2 months ago, it seemed a bit excessive, but now it's a phenomenon that is absolutely obvious to everybody. There is this state capitalism system at work, and it shouldn't come as a surprise.
Well, we'll see where it goes. I mean, we could be on to something great. As long as we abolish the taxes, I'm good.
it's not going to happen.
They could end up
you pay taxes.
costing
That's the
more.
point. That's the point we make in this small excerpt.
What's
in France,
in a name?
everybody's very upset about the Zuckman tax proposal because it would consist in imposing a 2% extra tax on billionaire. In the US, everybody pays it. A multiple of that through donations, through commitments, through all sorts of mechanisms that amount to state capture, which are not very different from what Putin used to do in Russia in the late 90s with the oligarchs. So I'm conscious of the time. We have 15 more minutes, max. So we are going to
segue to Putin, no?
Segue to Putin. There have been many, many books and articles and analysis devoted to the reason why Trump does Putin's bidding. So one of them relies on psychology, his love for strongmen, which is probably a very good reason. And another one, which we explore in the book, has to do with something which has been mentioned several times, but is not very much discussed, which has to do with the fact that, in all likelihood, Trump was a Russian, maybe not agent, but what we call in French idiot utile. He was instrumentalized. Useful idiot. Instrumentalized by the Soviets in '87 when he was invited to Moscow for exploring hotel deals, and then he came back and wrote an article in the New York Times against America financing NATO. Surprise, surprise. And so we explained in the book what is the mechanism behind this adherence of Trump to Putin's thesis.
So again, these words are our heroines, Olena. She started to move, then paused and turned back. Olena, just briefly, you said you had a solid theory about all this. What is it?
It's a discussion between young global leaders. The backdrop.
The backdrop, and that was a young journalist. And now, Olena. I don't know any more than the rest of you, Olena replied. But in a few words, here's what I think. Even if the president was once a Russian agent, he couldn't possibly be one now. In his position, it would be utterly impossible to have a handler, simply inconceivable. But that isn't really the point. It doesn't matter whether he's an agent or not. What matters is that he acts like one. But why does he behave like that, Rowan asked. Because he knows that Putin knows, and in turn Putin knows that the president knows that he knows. Knows what? Rowan said, a note of exasperation creeping into his voice. Putin knows plenty, Olena said, her tone lowering, about your president's private life, his whole life. There are testimonies, documents, recordings, so many recordings made in Moscow. As Sophie just said, Putin, who spent most of his life in counterintelligence, is a master predator. By profession, he'll never release a thing. Exposure would destroy the delicate architecture of this extraordinary psychological operation. An operation built on consent. That's for Putin. As for your president, he carries a dial in his mind. Deep down, he knows precisely what he should do, how far he can go, and where he must never tread. Whether he's praising or condemning, that invisible limit is always there, humming quietly in the back of his skull. He knows that the only thing that truly matters is the success of the operation, with a capital O, entrusted to him. Oh, come on, what operation? Spell it out in plain English for the simple guy, Rowan burst out. The operation, with a capital O, is to separate the United States from Europe, and to divide Europe itself, to weaken it, and then to let it rot. Deep down, the president knows this is what must be done to secure his master's admiration.
Who can disagree with that? Nobody does? If not, it's already 9:30, so we're going to move to the last excerpt.
I'm sorry, can I just...
yes, of course.
You're not offering any solutions to that outcome are you?
Well, how could we possibly offer a solution that's beyond anybody's control?
There's a short-term solution,
None
the
of us.
denouement of the book, but
You know,
Okay, you know what? Yeah, don't give it away.
yes.
You know, I firmly believe that there would be less problems in the world if we stopped thinking that we can control everything.
Of course, you're right. Absolutely.
We have to accept that there is a variety, and this is not bad. It's not bad to have.
Very wise. Yeah.
right reaction
Yeah.
to that variety.
So we have 8 minutes left, and we are going now to go to the core of the plot, which is a cognitive warfare operation led by the Russian GRU, the military espionage, in Davos. And Olena Kostarenko, the heroine of the book, is on the other side with the Ukrainians' secret service, and she depicts what this cognitive operation is all about. So we're not talking about hybrid warfare anymore, because in the book that's what everybody was expecting. Everybody was expecting some major escalation in hybrid warfare led by Russia in Davos. It could be anything. It could be an electricity cut. It could be a tunnel collapsing between Lanquart and Davos. It could be something like that. But the Russian operation was much more sophisticated because it took the form of a cognitive operation, and we explain what it is.
So after a violent assassination, rumors are spreading like wildfire. The message laid out the origins of the story with a brief analysis of the context. It carried a warning as well. An American alt-right influencer, whom the Ukrainians had long suspected of taking orders from Moscow, was the author of the first accusatory Substack post. With the help of the digital remoras feeding on likes and reposts and various bots, excerpts of his article incriminating Ukraine had spread fast, swarming onto X, Facebook, and a dozen other platforms. With every passing minute, the rumor was gathering speed and weight, and there was no doubt this was a Russian disinformation op. But what does that have to do with us? Tarath asked, Tarath being one of our Ukrainian operatives. Everything, replied Roman, who'd already gotten it. We've been here for 3 days. The annual meeting has been going for 2, but nothing has happened yet. This big Russian hybrid operation we've been talking about, what if that's what it's about? That what? Dmitry asked. A cognitive disinformation op. Beyond classic espionage and sabotage, Russia is moving into cognitive warfare, a mix of engineered narratives and networked disinformation that targets people's attention, tries to shape their beliefs and perceptions. It's a kind of cognitive infiltration, if you wish. We were expecting sabotage, possibly wet operations, but we have this instead, cognitive warfare.
And this is unfolding under our very eyes. We are on Tuesday, 3 more days to go. Let's imagine what might happen tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and on Friday.
But if you don't want to use your imagination, use ours.
You can rely on ours to get a sense of what it's going to be like. But we believe it's happening. So,
You mean this week, potentially?
potentially this week.
In terms of the disinformation, yeah, I mean, I hope there's not going to be blood running in the river, but...
So, I'm so sorry, but Brooke, Marianne and I have to go to Kajarat train to Lanquart.
I hope we get there.
You have a satchel there. Are the books in the satchel?
Yep.
Can we buy them?
Of
We'd
course,
love you to.
Of course, yeah. We'd be delighted.
And are there enough for people here?
Let's see.
Well, some people who've already bought them already.
1, 2, 3. Oh, no, that's not going well. That's better.
It's very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming.
There we go.
And by the way, I have always this little book with me, which is absolutely phenomenal. Umberto Eco, Reconnaître le fascisme. And you read it, and Umberto Eco, I was in charge of Davos for 7 years. The person who impressed me the most was Umberto Eco, who came in 2004, and absolutely amazing, inspiring, and fun, and gentle, and pathetic. And there's a formidable one of those. Yeah. And he wrote this little book, so in which you can recognize what's coming.
When were you looking
So
after the...
all those little things that she did.